Okay, welcome to the Jeff Kung Show, a special edition. Today with me, I have someone I respect very much. His name is Stan Lee, a dedicated member of the San Francisco Fire Department and also the ex-chair of the Asian Firefighters Association. We're very fortunate to have him here today to answer a few questions about the LA fires. Stan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for inviting me.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for all of your hard work and dedication as a firefighter. The past week in Los Angeles, where we're filming right now, has been very testing for the entire public community. And just watching the firefighters in the front lines have really touched a lot of Los Angelinos, and I'm sure people from around the world. So first of all, thank you for your service. Now, watching from San Francisco, where you are right now, when you saw the fires first break out in LA, what was your initial reaction?
Well, my initial reaction is I know it was going to be a hard fire to fight because of the high wind situation and the terrain of where the Pacific Palisades at, right? It's just southeast of Malibu, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We are right next to the coastline, and there's a lot of wind risk there.
During high wind situation, the fires flare up and our actual line of duty deaths, we lost a firefighter when I was a young firefighter. When I was in the academy, actually, around there, Lou Membretti, lieutenant. It was a below grade fire, and the winds basically flare up the fire. It brought back the flashbacks of how the high wind situation causes the fires to flare up. Sort of similar to Lahaina 2 years ago, right? Lahaina has a similar situation where it was a high wind situation and lack of water too.
Now, when you hear that something you just mentioned, where there's no water to fight the fires, there have been reports that in the Palisades, the hydrants didn't even have water pressure. First of all, have you ever been in a situation like that? Second of all, what does a fireman do in that situation? And how did that make you feel?
So, like I said, San Francisco is a different breed where we actually have like three ways of getting water. Basically, three reservoirs, tanks where we have basically that's our secondary water supply if our domestic water supply system run dry. Our main hydrants are usually supplied by basically our drinking water, right? Our backup one, our auxiliary water supply system, is a high pressure system where the highest reservoir is in our Twin Peaks reservoir, and at the lowest level, sea level, it could go up to we could get like about 200 psi at the nozzle. There is a situation where like a mechanical problem where we might have problems getting water to a fire, right? But usually we will not have a prolonged absence of water.
So when you heard that the Palisades hydrants were dry, did that surprise you?
Yes, right? Because, you know, Los Angeles being such a big metropolitan area, you figure the, and it's a very dry region in California where water is very important for fighting fires, right? And unlike San Francisco, LA is on the coast, but LA is not surrounded by water like we are.
Right. And, people have been asking, why don't you use seawater? Is there a difference between using fresh and seawater for fighting fires?
Well, they can, but I think it depends on the corrosion factor of salt water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we do use salt water or bay water if we have to, but because we have been using it for decades, if not almost a century, we are we we maintain our equipment by, like, if we use salt water, we have to flush it with fresh water afterwards.
Many people were asking, like, where's the water? Shouldn't be secondary water supplies? Did you feel that in the Palisades fires that there was a lack of secondary or auxiliary water?
Yeah, I think there was too dependent on just the hydrant and the reservoir to supply the hydrant, right? So it's a situation like this, especially when, you know, uh, I believe if for that region, it is considered the fire season for it, right? And, uh, you know, being proactive and making sure the water reservoirs were at least filled to a certain level so that, they're able to fight the fire with some water because, you know, granted, even with water, it might have been hard way, a tough fire to fight just because of the high wind situation, right?
Yeah.
Because the winds blow the embers and the embers will spread. I think that's what was the situation where, you know, it will cause secondary fire burns somewhere like a block away, and lack of resources, manpower, and water contribute to that. You know, getting out of control.
Now, are there checks for these hydrants, or whose responsibility it is to make sure that everything is working in order?
Well, here in San Francisco, we do. Each company, fire company, usually go out there and check their hydrants, like if not weekly or monthly, right? So we normally check, make sure like there's no obstruction, making sure the outlets are able to open, right? Make sure that we could flow water, because we usually do check it, and I believe and usually we check it on the weekends. So I'm not sure how LA County and LA City Fire what's their protocols, because I'm not in that organization, so I'm not I'm not aware of their maintenance schedule.
Their protocol. Well, that's interesting because if that's the case, and I'm imagining a lot of different fire departments, training wise or maintenance wise, must have some similar standards. So, that is a question that we have to ask LA County Fire for sure. Now, did you find that we're in the middle of the winter, and usually fire season is usually when it's very hot with low humidity, with high winds. Most of the time here, it's in the September, October, November months. Does a January brush fire strike you as surprising?
It does, but the thing is, it also depends on how much rainfall has occurred. Right, if there's a lack of rainfall, like LA is usually dry, right? The lack of rainfall would cause all the vegetation to remain dry, right,
Hmm.
with no new growth, right? So it's not surprising, but I'm hearing the news that the mayor was not in town, and there's a lot of finger pointings where they're saying that she should have knew better, because you know they're usually they expect more fires. So I'm not sure if that's correct or that's false misinformation, but you know I do believe if there's lack of rainfall, you will have you will be more prone to having fire situation.
That's an interesting topic because the finger pointing, the blaming of all that has been come to the forefront rather quickly during this entire predicament that we've been in. But just as a fire department, when you get a wind warning, let's say 5 days ahead of time, are you guys then on high alert and basically standby for any potential brush fires?
Well, like here in San Francisco is a little different. Like we are usually like our city's not as dry, right? Because
Okay.
like where I live in the Sunset is usually kind of foggy, right? So even if it's windy, it's not as big a concern. But we do have consideration if we do have like a structural fire, a high wind situation could cause more life safety issues.
Right. Now, many people who got the alerts on their phones decided to stay to try to defend from the fires individually. Um, does that work? Does hosing down your roof really work, or does that really more inhibit the job of firefighters like you?
Well, because of the numerous or the fire size, right? I don't, and personnel issue and lack of resources, it could help. But the thing is, like I mentioned, with that high wind situation, the garden hose is probably not going to do much. I don't
Mhm.
know if you ever been to a bonfire and if you were trying to spray with water, a big bonfire, and it was the wind is blowing, is pretty hard to put it out with a garden hose,
Mm,
right? Because it's the intensity, the high heat intensity will cause most of the water to evaporate as soon as they hit, right, the steam, right, and the size load, right. So you think about the area that you have to put water on, right. If you have a few acres burning, the garden hose might not do it, right.
right. Right.
And that's where usually like the wildland firefighters usually go there and they cut a they use their shovels, their rakes, and their backhoes and cut a fire break to stop the fire from progressing forward, right?
Right.
And that's usually the situation. But when the interface between wildfire, grass fire into structure fire occurs, then once they get that fuel load going, like I see many of the pictures of the buildings fully involved in fire, and you also have a vegetation fire, wildfires going on in the background. Is almost impossible to figure for a lack of resources to decide what to do. Like
Hmm.
usually when the building's fully involved in fire and you don't have water, you don't have enough manpower, you just try to prevent it from spreading.
There have been a lot of different fire departments from around the country who have come to assist in Los Angeles. And, I'm curious, like, what is that chain of command? Is it directly from the fire chief that commands all of the different departments and all of the fire personnel to tell them where to focus their firefight? Like, how are those decisions determined on as to which fires to go fight, which lines to go fight?
Well, I think it depends on uh, the county, city and county, and what they do. Like, do they strike a mutual aid box, as we call it, right, where they request all the departments that have a mutual aid agreement with, like, LA City or county, right? Like or if they contacted Cal Fire, like I
Yeah.
know for a fact that my department got immediate need requests, so they sent one fire engine first, and then when the strike team was assembled or needed, they send the rest of the resources from there, right? So that's just San Francisco. So I can imagine Cal Fire probably mobilized all their personnel, right, and then the surrounding area from LA County, right, because you got Orange County also,
Yeah.
and San Diego County. So and usually they would check in, and then I think I'm not quite sure who would take the incident command, but they would try to unify it so that they could at least uh, dispatch each strike team to a section of fire to assist in firefighting.
But like, who
That makes
determines what to save, right? Because we're in the Palisades. You have a lot of houses going up. Some people are saying save my house. Some people are saying save my house. But sometimes you see some firefighters perched on someone's balcony, or like, how is that decision made?
Well, I think it's a tactical thing. They have to decide what they can and cannot save, and what, like I said, what if there's water, right? If they have water, abundant supply of water, then that's up to, like, their strike team leader or the incident command to decide which building they can or cannot save, right? So me not being there, I can't guess. I don't want to guess about why they're picking one building to save over another. But if, for my opinion, is basically is the best case scenario what they think they could save, right,
Okay.
or try to prevent.
Right. Now, when you're watching these fires unfold live on television, we have the Eden Canyon fire, we have the Palisades fire, then all of a sudden we had the Sunset fire in Hollywood Hills, and then there was a Ventura fire, then there was the fire in West Hills, all within the span of 3 days. Did you find anything fishy about that? And do you feel that it could have been arson?
Well, I don't want to speculate, but the thing is, it could be a possibility, especially if there's no reason for all these secondary fires to ignite, right? There could be there could be a non-voluntary reason why the fire got, was started in a different location, right? It could be simple stuff, like even a spark from like and like a spark from like the electrical lines or something like that could cause it, and I don't want to speculate if it was arson because I don't know for sure, right? But like in a house fire, if we have multiple location, obvious burns in a house fire, usually that indicates arson in a house fire.
So your gut, did you find it fishy at least? I don't need to speculate, but did you find it a little bit weird?
I found it weird that it was, spread out, not in the general, the same location, right? They're quite pretty far away from each other, right?
Yeah.
So for the embers to go that far, usually like for the Palisade, I could imagine like if Malibu start catching on fire, or further down the coast catching on fire. But it's further inland, right? Because there was one near Pasadena, correct?
That's right. One in Pasadena, which is, 20,
Quite
30
quite
miles
distant.
away.
Yeah, that's quite a distance. So, but it could be also the fact that high wind situation, just a little fire would cause something to spread and grow fast.
Right. Now, I'm sure this couldn't have been completely prevented, but a lot of insurance companies, this has been well reported in the media, have decided not to insure homeowners in the Los Angeles area anymore because they just thought it wasn't good business anymore. They couldn't make money, they were going to lose too much on it, and they did their research and determined that it was too high of a risk in Los Angeles. In your view, was this fire just inevitable, or a big fire like this inevitable, and was just bound to happen because of the climate we're in and the geological brush of our forestry?
Well, being proactive, for example, I don't know if you remember Oakland. We lost Oakland Hills
Yep.
many years ago, right? And similar situation where there were a lot of vegetation and they were allowed to grow and without maintenance to try to prevent that situation from occurring, and that's how we lost the Oakland Hills, right? It was similar situation. I don't think it was a high wind situation at the time, but the thing is, there was a lot of overgrown vegetation and it was dry,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that caused that to be a problem, right? With the insurance, well, it's just not LA. I believe it's California wide because we have properties up here that are people are hearing that their fire insurance are getting canceled, right? Because a certain situation. For example, I actually had to put a new roof on my home because the insurance flew a drone over it and they determined that my roof was old. So they were going to cancel unless I put a new roof on. So that's here in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I can imagine it being in LA probably similar.
So just to follow up on that question, when you saw the wreckage and the fires break out, do you think more could have been done to prevent this from being so catastrophic?
I I think just being having fire departments being able to go out there and be proactive, uh, cutting back the vegetation so that there's a break. Like I remember watching one of the interviews, how someone mentioned how the hills there used to have like little breaks crisscross. That was many years ago, and now there there's no such thing going on, right? So those breaks actually will help at least slow down the fire. Granted, with the high wind situation, I don't know if it could have contained it, but at least gave the firefighters some chance to being able to fight it.
Talking about preparation, there's been a lot of controversy online regarding budget cuts with the fire department. I think you've probably seen LAFD Chief Crowley also went on a lot of media to, claim her case that $17 million in budget cuts largely affected their ability to fight the fires. Of course, it's such a sad situation considering all the catastrophic results of this fire. Have you felt any effects of budget cuts in San Francisco?
Well, we're going into a situation with our new mayor, right? And he inherited a city that's, I believe, around $800 million in deficit. So it's going to be across the board. How every department here is going to have to figure out how to, tighten the belt a little bit to bring us through the deficit issue, right? Granted, I'm not sure about the budgetary issue in LA, but I assume similar situation probably is happening there, where unless the fire department and their union were proactive in maintaining, minimum staffing and making sure companies and firehouses stay open, that whatever political climate could dictate if there is a cut, right? And then being you know being if the fire unions were proactive in trying to maintain the at least the standard, then it could have helped, but I'm not sure. But like I said, water, wind, there's many factors here.
When those budget cuts do happen, in your experience, what is the first thing to get cut? Is it personnel? Is it equipment?
Like for example, here, because of costs and time, usually we don't hire as frequently as we should, right?
Mhm.
So if you go through a hiring slowdown, then you're going to be playing catch up with personnel wise. Also, people don't realize getting a new fire truck engine takes time. Planning. Each department has different, specifications they want from the manufacturers. So they had to go out there. They had to have the money to start the contract, to start the build, because unlike a car, it takes time to build a new fire truck and engine.
Mm, got you. Now, being the ex-president of the Asian Firefighters Association, the topic of DEI has been also brought up in the media, and I just wanted to ask you, do you feel like the DEI initiatives have affected your work as a firefighter? And are those claims valid?
Well, here in San Francisco, we embrace DEI, and because our fire department should represent the people that we serve, right? In San Francisco, we were the AAPI population is close to 40%, right? So that number is something that we try to strive for, right? It's just like the Hispanic, the African Americans, we try to make sure their numbers are represented also. Besides, also, people of different sexual orientation, and
Hmm.
so we have been making sure that people adhere to our stringent standards, because uh, we have one of the trickiest type of situation here in fighting fires because of the many varied terrains here and the way that our buildings are built. Right, I think most of the buildings in LA are like ranch style homes. Right, we usually have wood frame construction of buildings 2 to 4 stories tall. So we have what we call wooden ladders that we have to make sure every firefighter is able to lift. And our heaviest ladders are 50-foot extension wooden ladder.
Hmm.
That's about 350 pounds.
But I want to make it clear that doesn't matter what race, what sexuality you are, you still go through the same stringent standards of training to become a firefighter. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. For example, I'm 5'6", right? But I'm still expected to be able to lift the ladder like a firefighter who's 6'2", right? I
Right.
still got to do my part, because at a fire, we're not going to be good, have the second chance, the luxury of picking who could lift the ladder with us, right? We should grab the first six there, and it's up to the first six people to throw up that wooden ladder.
Just looking at the entire situation in Los Angeles right now, do you think anything could have been done differently?
Well, if the reservoirs weren't at least filled to capacity, where they, the minimum capacity needed for fighting fires, that is the factor, right?
Okay.
I'm not sure if it is because I'm, like I said, I never saw firsthand these reservoirs are empty. I heard stories that the hydrants were dry, right? That is a situation that should be looked upon, and the residents and citizens of LA should have people look into that, making sure if that is the situation, how is it going to be corrected, right? Making sure that there's checks and balances to prevent this from happening again.
Now, did that make you angry? Because these are your brothers on the front lines, right? Risking their lives. When you see
Oh yeah,
something like that happen, did you get angry?
yeah. It makes me angry because, like I mentioned, Lahaina ran into a similar situation where the firefighters were trying to fight fires there. There was no water in the hydrants, right? And it was a very dry situation then.
So Lahaina just happened 2 years ago. Los Angeles happened. There was no water in the hydrants there. No water in the hydrants here. Do you suspect that this is a systemic issue, like in other cities as well?
Well, Lahaina is a different breed because I believe the water, right? The water was not. The water was privately owned, if I recall. So that's the situation with Maui, right? Here is different, right? Like, how is the reservoirs in like the Palisades? Well, how's the reservoir that supply the water to the hydrants in Palisade? How are those supplied, right? Is it from rainfall? Is it pumped in from Northern California through our, through the
The
canals,
aqueduct, the
right?
canals, yeah.
Yeah, right. See, it depends. I'm not sure how the reservoir situation is, situated where they're at in regards to the Pacific Palisades, right? Now, knowing that this did happen, right? Maybe they should look to rectify this problem by making sure there's reservoirs for that area so that this doesn't happen again. It's just having the will to actually, fill the water reservoirs, build the reservoirs, and actually maintain it. Like I mentioned to people, a firefighter is not. We don't work all the time, but we're more like an insurance policy. You have us around in case something like this happened. When something like this happened, you're glad you had us around so that we could fight the fire. The water is similar. You want the water to be there in case this happens again. You want to make sure that the firefighters will have the water to be able to put out the fires in the future.
All right. Well, Stan, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. I think today's conversation is going to help a lot of people in LA who are very worried about what's going on. Yeah, thank you for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you for having me.